Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So I am currently in the process of theory crafting some builds for the Legacy of Phrecia League, or event, we'll call it, which starts next Thursday. Now that we've had the announcement, I'll run through the ascendancies that were released today. There's like Behemoth, which looks really cool, except for like one exception, and I hope they change it. And yeah, basically, like, there's some really cool ascendancies that are coming into the game in the event. Now, for anyone who didn't know, you can basically search out the ascendancies currently, so you can't change the ascendancies. But like, if you type in, for example, Witch, you can get now the Bogman, the Bog Shaman, the Herald, all the rest of it. And then basically all you do is click into it, and then you just need to change the ascendancy points within it, right? So that's how you get it in POB currently. If you're wondering how you can theory craft, and how we'll be theory crafting on each of the streams leading up to the event starting next Thursday. So the first one off the rank is Herald of Agony. Now, if you want to see what this build looks like, I'll put a link in the description. I actually know how to play this build because I did it in 3.25 just to figure out how to play it. But the problem with the main game is you just cannot get enough virulence into the build, nor can you just get enough damage. And the Herald Witch actually solves for X on basically all of these problems. So, a few precursors before we get into breaking down this build. Number one, yes, it says $40 million. $40 million. Yes, it says 40 million DPS. This is extremely high. This is a level 100 tree, okay? So this is an endgame tree. I figured the easiest way to figure out that a build's going to work is to actually build it into the endgame. Now, the stuff that's in this tree isn't like innumerably impossible to get. In fact, I got all of these items for when I played this during the league. So it is actually totally possible to play this build without any issues. It just depends on the market that you're going to play with. Now, so there are some stopgap things in here, like the Topaz Flasks and the Rumi concoctions and stuff like that. And yeah, we do have some other things like a Uber drop Thread of Hope, which you're not going to get really realistically early on. And that's only to get these 3 nodes here. So you could drop these off, take a hit to your defense, or you could find another way to pass through here. This tree is not optimum, right? This tree is subject to change, but it's basically designed to give you an idea of how to get this working. Like, what I would actually do is drop these nodes off here, and then basically link up these nodes in here, and then, yeah, just find another 2 nodes from your health nodes here to get your max block up, and you can fix that problem pretty quickly. Now, when you are theory crafting for these builds, you need to make sure that the ascendancy is off, otherwise it's going to double up. There's another couple of things that I noticed in this which don't currently work very well. So there's some compensation in here. So if we turn this off, right, based on the calculation, and I'll get into this shortly, we should have like 96 stacks of virulence. Now, if we turn this off, this drops this down. And basically, and I think they may have actually changed this now. Actually, I think they fixed this. So basically, we start with 96. We should get to 40 mil, 75. Yeah, okay, they fixed this now. All right, cool. We're getting there. So basically, we no longer need that. So there's a few changes to the tree that need to be factored in. Like, this does nothing now, so we can get rid of that. So we'll resave that, and that's the tree that I'll give to you guys. Now, there's 2 errors with this tree. It's mainly just dexterity and its strength, right? So we would just need to switch out some gear. It's not impossible. We need like around about 30 strength, and we need like 60 dexterity, which we could get by just getting the attributes on the gloves or something like that, and making some compromises about damage. Now, some other things. This is max block. We do use Savalan. So, yep. Now, it is a compromise between offense and defense in this scenario, so this is a much more offensive build. But considering my build got to about 5.6 million DPS, and I couldn't take down T17 bosses, but I could fight them for a pretty long duration, and I could take down Ubers with 5.6 million DPS with the Agony Crawler, 40.6 million DPS is ridiculous, and even if you're running it at like 20 million DPS, it's ridiculous, right? It's going to be totally off the crank. Now, one of the reasons why this is so powerful is it's 21 plus 12, so it's a level 33 Herald of Agony Crawler. I haven't like ticked around to figure out which gems are totally optimum, and obviously we've got an Empower level 4 in here too. So for each gem level, we lose DPS, right? So that's just how this is going to work. Basically, with these Herald skills, the stronger the skill is going to be dictated by the amount of I guess gem levels, right? Gem level, like in Path of Exile 2 for those Path of Exile 2 players. Gem level in Path of Exile 1 is significantly more potent, not in melee, but for minion skills, spell skills, and all the likes, right? You start to get some crazy DPS once you get over level 30 gem levels. Now, there are a few other things that give me huge amounts of DPS, and we'll talk about this very shortly. Now, the other big problem with this build is being able to stack 96 stacks of Virulence. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that successfully, considering, and how quickly we can do that. I assume we can do that quite quickly because we do double stack buff effects with our Circle of Nostalgias, but that's just something that we're going to have to test out. Another thing, this is 81% all resist across the board, given Flask being up, and 75% chaos resist is really easy to achieve with this build. Now, that's basically like the basic gist of it. So the way that we proc the actual skill is we use Ball Lightning of Orbiting, we use Chance to Poison, and we use Spell Echo, and then basically we do it with this. There's other ways to play this build, and I'll put some different POBs in the description of different options that you could exercise to be able to make this work, such as using Storm Rain with overlapping arrows and using like a really good bow, and Maloney's mechanisms and things like that. This is the way that I played it, and it worked pretty damn well last league when I actually played the build. Now, it does get to 135,000 effective hit pool, which isn't that high, and we're heavily reliant on block and overcapped resistances, so you're not going to want to get hit too much. This isn't really going to be the best Delve version. To be able to play this optimally for Delve and things like that, we probably either need to switch to CI or we need to significantly increase our defenses, and we're going to need things like Mage Blood and things like that to do that. Now, if you do get a Mage Blood on this, it'll be totally wild. The other big disadvantage of this setup is based on the Ascendancy in the Witch, but essentially with Coming Calamity, which we have in this, there's no way to have auras in the build. So this is no auras in the build as well. So yeah, basically we had to come up with solutions to get around that. But for the most, this should be relatively achievable. Now, how would you play this early on? Basically, you would want to stack twin Cold Iron points, and that's going to give you +3 to physical spell skills, and that means you can get an early easy 6 to your minion, +4, plus scaling it to level 30 with the Ascendancies assisting that as well, plus level 20 or 21 skill gem. You can really easily get this to level 30, right? Around about very early on. And then that's going to help you progress. Level 30 with this is going to be totally whack, right? And as long as you're then scaling up all of your virulence, so you should have no problems with doing damage. The other big thing here is we need to be able to maintain wither stacks, which is pretty easy with this build anyway. And basically our minion ensures that happens. The stronger the Agony Crawler, the faster the Agony Crawler, the more damage it's going to do. And its cast rate's 5.33 as well, so it hits quite quick and it hits incredibly hard. You're almost going to like one hit, like at 5 to 7 million DPS, you one hit basically everything in most maps at T16. So this is just going to absolutely eviscerate the endgame if you scale it up. That's basically it for the precursor. Now, we'll go through some things in here. Some people will say, well, this is optimum damage. Yeah, and yes, this is optimum damage. There's a couple of things to bear in mind. You can't trigger Unholy Might unless you're actually killing enemies, so you drop 8 million DPS, so that's going to take it down for boss killing. The other thing is Wither stacks. You got to wait for that to stack up. The other thing is you got to have Brittle Ground near the enemy, so if you take that off, you get to 29 million DPS, and if you're not stationary for longer than 1 second, you're going to lose your offense, but it's not going to your defense, but it's not going to really do anything to you at the end of the day. We only have 1 minion here, but that doesn't really do anything. You could switch out the Carrion Golem for something else as well. It's totally up to you. And we do need to keep the Virulence stacks up, which isn't going to happen straight away on a boss. You might only get to like 40 stacks, so you're only going to do 5 million DPS. When you get to 60 stacks, you're going to go up. When you get to 70 stacks, you're going to be at 15 million. And then when you get to 96, you're just going to be face-meltingly ridiculous. Now, as long as you go near the enemy, you'll do tons of damage, and that should be fine. Enemies, your Agony Crawler always has Onslaught as well. And the other thing to bear in mind too is the Agony Crawler cannot take damage. So basically your Agony Crawler is an immortal minion that can never ever die. Other things that we don't consider for this build is we don't have Spectres in the build as well. So if you can add Spectres to the build, or you can add an AG to the build somehow, you can get Kingmaker into the build. And also you could get, you know, things like Ephemeral Garb, which is going to increase your defense, and that's going to make you quite tanky, and it's also going to mean you have Cull and you're immune to crit and stuff like that. If you don't know what all of that means, then let me know and I'll do a video explaining what Animate Guardians are and how to kit them out. But anyway, with understanding all that, let's get into the video and talk about the build in more detail. Okay, so first of all, just for anyone who's new to the channel, I like to go through the path of building config screen because this is your bullshit check, right? This is to make sure that you know where everything is coming from, and also if you're playing the game and somebody's got like your DPS is inevitably going to be higher, right? So you want like Guardian Pinnacle Boss and Uber Boss because they have debuffs. We have 10 mil DPS, but really Guardian Pinnacle Boss damage is what we want to basically go by. That's the predominant stat in the game. So number one, our major god is Brine King and Tukahama. This just gives you good defenses and whatnot while you're standing stationary. Now, time spent stationary we have at 5. Now, the reason why 5 is we're running a Nature's Patience in this, which is essentially, it's called Natural Affinity. And basically this means the more time that you're standing still, up to 5 seconds, you get less damage per grasping vine. Normally, conventionally, you'd do a lot of damage if you're playing like a melee build or something like that. I use this in almost all my delve builds so I can just face tank stuff and stand stationary. But if you don't want to move too much and you're casting like a lightning orb, orb of orbiting, or lightning ball of orbiting, sorry, then this is just really good to have. Now, we're not as tanky as we'd like to be, and we rely heavily on block chance, but this just gives us that little bit of edge that we need at the end of the day. Now, have your minions been created recently? Yeah, this is going to be a pretty common stat that we have within the build. Now, I don't think I've got any standard jewels. Actually, I do these Leo jewels as well. You'll notice the same stat on them as well. Basically, how the Agony Crawler works is it just keeps spawning out of the ground and whatnot. So this is almost always up. Now, someone might correct me on that, but my understanding is it's pretty much up all the time. If it's ticked off, we don't lose that much damage at the end of the day, but it is part of our damage profile. Now, Onslaught comes from our setup up here. So Ravenous Horde. So minions have 30% chance to gain Onslaught on kill. That's not guaranteed to always be up. So if you wanted to, you could tick that off. Again, you'll lose like 800k DPS. Tend to keep it turned on though. It's not going to apply to bosses so much, but it will apply to mapping, right? Now, we have Unholy Might. This is coming from one of our keystone points, or mastery points, which is over here. So minion mastery, minion offense mastery. Minions have 25% chance to gain Unholy Might for 4 seconds on kill. Again, this won't apply to bosses, but it will apply to mapping. So you just blast through maps. Now, blasts are active. This is a benign stat. We just have it. Sometimes it affects the build if something is significant in the build that actually merits that, but otherwise it's fine. Have you used a minion skill recently? You're always using minion skills. Corpses consumed recently. We do have an offering set up in the build. So we do use a Desecrate and Spirit offering setup, which gives us quite a lot of damage, and I'll talk about how this in particular works very soon. But essentially, yeah, this should be fine. So then beyond that, we have one brand skill. We do use Arcanus brand, and we use Arcanus brand to summon our curses. Because if you want to be lazy like me and hit one button, this is a really simple way to get 2 curses up, which is Sniper's Mark and Despair. And the reason why we can do that is because we have Whispers of Doom selected up here, so we can have 2 curses. Now, you could use the mastery points in here to get a good debuff as well. I think we can get crit immunity if we've cursed something as well, or 40% chance to reduce crit taken. Otherwise, you can get recover life as well. It's entirely up to you. You could also hinder enemies with curses too. So it's, again, totally up to you. But basically, we do have a synergy here where we have to drop a Arcanus brand to trigger both curses on an enemy, and then we're going to do face melting levels of damage. Now, Feeding Frenzy is active. This is coming from our Carrion Golem setup. So if we have a look at Carrion Golem, we have Feeding Frenzy. This applies to all of our minions. So minions from supported skills are aggressive. Arguably, we could have that, on another minion. But yeah, we do have Feeding Frenzy. It's like a global stat at the end of the day. So if we turn this off, we do lose a little bit of damage. So we do want this in the build. Meat Shield, we do have our Carrion Golem meat shielding near me. It doesn't really do anything, but it's just really useful to have because it takes some of the aggro off you. Now, Wither Stacks is actually coming from the Carrion, from the Agony Crawler itself, and we have Withering Touch. And so with every hit that it's doing Withering Stacks at the end of the day. And that's basically how it works. It's really simple stuff. Now, Brittle Ground we have coming from our boots. So our boots actually have an implicit on them, which is drops Brittle Ground while moving, lasting 2 seconds. You can get 4, 6, and I think 8 seconds or whatever it is with this. This is the lowest tier roll. This comes from like your Ickers, right? That drop when you get to like 14 to 16 maps. It's not that hard to get. You could get Sap Ground, which is going to give you more damage, but basically my understanding is it gives you like 6% crit to your minion, right? And we do scale crit on our minion. So yeah, our minion does a lot of damage. Now, enemy is shocked. The reason why I have this in the build is because we're using Lightning Orb, we're using Lightning Ball of Orbiting. So we are going to shock. This is probably a little overtuned. We could take it down to 10% shock just as a, like, it's going to be applying to enemies because you're using a lightning skill. It's up to you. Like, I'll put this at 10% shock because someone might be like, 20% is ridiculous. That extra 1 million DPS is total bait. And so basically, yeah, that just tunes that. Again, Guardian and Pinnacle boss damage as well. And then there's no other modifiers. I never change these things because you should not do that. It's unnecessary unless you're trying to really do some detailed scaling or whatnot. But overall, a couple of short points on this is we do have some warning errors. We do have dex and strength limitations here that need to be adjusted in the build. And our effective hit pool could be much greater. But 135,000 at 40 million DPS at level 100. To be honest with you, like, you're going to one-shot a lot of stuff with that. And you're using a minion skill again. Like, and you're using block. So the only thing that's really limiting you is the fact that you could get hit within a 14% range of probability. And the other thing that also throws the block out is we are using a Rumi's concoction. So we have 78% and 82%, which drops our effective hit pool again. Let's be real, like, if your minions are taking the damage for you, then basically you got nothing to really worry about. You could actually add Herald Purity into the build and get rid of the Carrion Golem, and you could run a Hoa Hop configuration, and then essentially they would act as 6 blockers, because basically the node that that applies to the witch that gives you increased virulence also gives you +2 to the numbers of Sentinels of Purity. So you could have 6 Sentinels of Purity running around, which you could use to essentially kite enemies off you and or slow enemies or apply curses or something like that, or temporal chains or something like that if you really wanted to. And that would only make your build even more powerful at the end of the day. But I have Carrion Golem. I probably would change that to Herald of Purity, but it's entirely up to you at the end of the day. You could even have them meat shielding around you, and then they would defend you and take the damage for you, and the Herald of Purity minions would be like level 25 or some 24 or 25, 26. So they would even output even more damage, which would get your damage pool up a little bit higher. But they would more like they would act as a support skill more so than anything else. But that's basically it for everything. There's no like endurance charges. If you can get endurance charges in the build, your defense goes way up again. So that's something worth considering as well. But it does have a very low physical max hit damage capacity. So it's not like the strongest build in the world. But you know, we do sort of act on block and things like that. So, or rely on block. So we're basically at the mercy of our shield always being up and protecting us. Bossing, this is probably going to be strong either way. Uber bosses, I couldn't tell you if this is going to work. It needs to be tested. And again, this just comes back to me reiterating, and I'll put it in the comments below or description below. This build, like, I've tested the primary build that I played last league and I got it quite tanky. But you know, it needs to be tested at this stage before I can definitively say whether it's good or bad. This is just to give you an idea of how to build a Agony Herald Witch, Herald of Agony Herald Witch at the end of the day. But anyway, let's get into the gearing and then skill gem setup and the passive tree. Okay, so gearing wise, I literally just took the gear off the build that I already ran because that was pretty straightforward. If you want to see what I did to put this together or thread this together, I believe my VOD is up on the Twitch, and I'll put a link to it in the description below. So the reason why I don't upload it to YouTube anymore is they basically copyright the music on everything. So I'll link it below if you want to see the stream from last. I only took about 2 hours to thread it together because I've already played this build just at a very lesser form than this. Arguably, if you get this to 15 million DPS, it's going to do ridiculous damage either way, and you're going to have a fun day in the game, and it's just going to be a no-brain build for, you know, it's just going to be fun. Anyway, so we use a Convoking Wand on this. We have a Runecraft on this as well. It gives us 37% increased damage. But we need +1 to spell skill gems and +1 to minion skill gems. And we also need trigger a socketed spell skill when you use a skill. And this is how we trigger our Spirit Offering and our Desecrate. So basically, we're constantly casting Lightning Orb of Orbiting, or Lightning Ball of Orbiting, and so this is going to constantly proc this as you're running through maps and blasting. So it's pretty good. We run a Surveillant. I don't know what the price of this shield's going to be. It's just going to be totally dependent on how the market goes. You often get Surveillance from doing shipping, and we do know that it's going to have the Settlers of Kalgur content, so this is a shield that's going to exist. Again, this is just a really good helm. You can do whatever you want, but the big stat here is +2 to all minion skills. This is a global stat, so it buffs all of your minion skills up. Again, the chest piece is not too bad. We do have increased effective offerings, which gives us a huge amount of damage, as well as increased block attack damage, which is going to be really good. You can get chest pieces with +1 to dex, strength, and intelligence gems on them. They're really, really expensive and mirror tier, so if you wanted to take this build in mirror tier, you could. Entirely up to you, but I'll leave that for you to figure out. This is just a guide. In our gloves, we do have we hinder enemies, and we also do minion damage within our gloves. This isn't necessary. You could, realistically, to fix your attribute problems, you're probably going to do that through gloves and something else in the build. So you could do that, or you could do something else. It's entirely up to you. You'll lose a little bit of damage. The highest amount of damage you'll lose is about 744,000 damage, right? So I'll leave that to you to figure out how you want to do it. Boots, again, you do need Brittle if you want more damage. You could use Sap if you want more defense. And then we just put any old stat on it, and then Bob's your uncle. We also got Strength on the boots, and then just all resistances. These, again, aren't like the best boots on the market. You can get way better boots than this, but they are pretty good boots. Ashes of the Stars. The reason why we need Ashes of the Stars is because the quality of the Agony Crawler increases the amount of virulence that the Agony Crawler can act on. And the way that we stack damage on this is by being able to throttle the living hell out of sustaining virulence, right? This also gives us +1 to all skills, and Grave Pact gives us a huge amount of damage too, so we get about 14.2 million DPS at our total cap stacks with this setup, and it's quite powerful. We do a double stack of Circle of Nostalgia. This is from taking down the preceding, like Twisted Tree or Twisted something like that. These are the maps that lead up into Cortex, so it's actually quite easy to get these Circles of Nostalgia. You can like target farm them realistically. So we have increased buff effect, and we also have increased damage. And the reason why we have increased buff effect is this is going to mean that we do increased poison damage, which is going to give us more virulence, which is going to allow us to do more damage at the end of the day. There are rings that you can get that I think come from Uber Cortex as well. Are really expensive, but if you want to play this build and you're really hell-bent on it, you can do that. And yeah. We run a Darkness Enthroned on this, and this is only 92% roll, so these are usually pretty cheap during the league. The reason why we do this is because then we run 2 Ghastly Jewels, and we crank them up by, 92% on either. So we have increased chaos damage from a minion, and we also have increased damage, so it's 20% plus 92% of that as additional effect. And then increased life and cast speed too, because cast speed is really effective. The faster you can cast your ball lightning, the more your virulence stacks are going to go up. The whole idea is to get your virulence stacks up. If you didn't want to use ball lightning, you could also use Stormbrand as well if you're going the caster route for this. Now, flasks, I've just put in like Topaz, Ruby, and whatever. These are just really good flasks to run, but realistically, you don't need the Sapphire flask, and you could switch it out for something else. Rumor's Concoction we need for the block. This gets us up to the 86%. This is not going to always be up, but, you know, bear that in mind. Now, we do have another socket here for the that compensates for this Prismatic Jewel, but we have Apocalypse as one of the Ascendancy points, Scourge, Coming Calamity, and Future Nostalgia. When you're doing this, make sure that you know how they link up on the trees, but this basically gives us all the juicy stuff. So we get 100% increased buff effect. So with the rings plus Herald of Agony, we get 200% increased buff effect, which means we're able to get our virulence stacks up really quickly. We also get free chaos resistance, which is really good. Coming Calamity, we lose our aura skills, but we gain 200% increased mana reservation efficiency, which is why we only reserve 33%, or we have unreserved mana of 70%, which is really good because it means we can just keep casting our lightning orb ball skill of orbiting. Then we have Scourge, which gives us +2 to Sentinels of Purity and 25 to maximum Virulence. Virulence is the most important stat in the entire, like, it's just the most important stat for this build. Minions deal another 66% increased damage while affected by the Herald, which we are because we have the Agony. And then Apocalypse, which is +3 to the level of all Herald skill gems, which we need because it's going to give us huge amounts of damage to our Agony Crawler at the end of the day. And then basically we just have like large clusters. Now we'll talk about the cluster jewels and everything else when we get into the Atlas. When we get into the pathing tree. But yeah, that's for the next part of the video. But yeah, let's talk about the skill gems next. Now, assuming these are like maxed out, right? Yeah, these are like, you know, end game stats, right? So as you're going through, if you can get to like early game, you'll be able to easily scale to 1 to 2 million DPS early on with 2 cold iron points, and then basically just take it from there and level up, right? It's a Herald of Agony is a very powerful skill. So Herald of Agony, we have this in our body armor initially, and this can all change. You can socket this wherever you got the sockets, right? But your 6 link's going to go on your body armor. So this is a level 21 gem, right? And you'll see with the increase in quality, we have 45% quality, we get 51 stacks of virulence. And the big thing here is understanding that Agony Crawler has 6% increased attack speed per virulence, 11% physical damage per virulence, and, you know, base increase per virulence of 159 to 296 added physical damage per virulence. This is why it's like a multiplicative exponent of scaling. It's a really, really strong skill if you're stacking virulence and gem level at the end of the day. Buff grants you 20% chance to gain poison on hit, which is why we run poison on hit, the poison on hit gem, support gem on our lightning ball lightning of orbiting. Now we have awakened minion damage at level 5. We have +1 to supported minion skill gems, which is really useful. So this isn't going to necessarily be cheap because like zombie builds are going to be a thing. Wolf builds are probably going to be a thing. Herald builds are going to be minion builds are going to be a thing. Minion builds are basically really strong in this event, and I'm hoping this event goes for much longer than 1 month because I want to play a lot of these builds. We need Pierce, and the reason why we need a Pierce gem in this is so it shoots through enemies, so we do a lot more damage this way. If you don't have Pierce, the build feels pretty bad. Empower, this gives us +3 to the level of support gems. We could have Awaken Empower as well if you can afford it, and I believe this gives you a little more. Awakened Empower, it doesn't, it gives you +3. So yeah, you could have level 4 Empower, which is corrupted, and yeah, that'd be really good, but it'd give you a lot of damage, right? Withering Touch we have to get our Wither stacks up, so 25% chance to inflict Wither on hit, and then Awaken Vicious Projectiles is just going to give you a ton more projectile damage with your Herald of Agony. Now, we have Arcanus Brand, and then this then procs both Sniper's Mark and Despair. You're going to do this on bosses or rares if you want to. You're probably not going to need to do this on rares and maps, but definitely bosses. And this is just going to allow you to totally nuke bosses. You can get another +1 curse on the chest, right? Which you can get dropping from Delve and stuff like that. You could put another curse aura on this, and basically, or hex as it might be. And you could literally run like anything that increases damage. Like Elemental Weakness is going to give you another 14 million DPS. Actually, no, it's going to take away DPS. You know, there's tons of things that you could do with this. You could run Hex Bloom on this as well, so it just keeps going to all the enemies around you. Like, that's another option as well. But, yeah, I'll leave it up to you to figure out how you want to do that. Now, Spirit Offering triggers in the weapon, and we could actually put one more in here. Now, you can only run one offering at a time. We don't have the Necromancer Ascendancy, so we run Desecrate Spirit Offering, and you could run something else, like something else that procs, you know, poison or something. You know, I'll leave that up to you, but the option's there to run another skill gem in there too. We have automation in the build with Convocation, Molten Shell, and Flame Dash. You do need automation on Convocation. The reason for this is you want the Agony Crawler to be standing near you as much as possible. So yeah, Convocation's really useful to have on this build. And then obviously you want to break the link so that automation doesn't link into Flame Dash. So you want this set up on a 3 link with one like surplus link in it. Carrion Golem, again, you could actually, yeah, no, you don't have that helm. Carrion Golem, we've got Meat Shield, Minion Life, Feeding Frenzy. You could get rid of this and run an AG if you can afford it, and just like throttle the level of the AG, so you'd have like a super tanky AG that can never die. But I'll leave it up to you to figure out how you want to play it. And then Ball Lightning, we finally have Ball Lightning of Orbiting, Chance to Poison, and Spell Echo. and that's basically it, right? I probably would recommend running that in the gloves and then putting this in the gloves. And the reason for that is because of the way the Surveillance works is it'll try and trigger a socketed elemental spell on block, which means you won't be able to cast a spell yourself. So yeah, that's basically how that works. But that's it for the skill gems. Let's talk about the tree. Okay, so tree-wise, we're just going to get rid of that for the time being. So basically, you're going to start Witch Ascendancy because that's where the Herald Witch starts, right? So we're going to come up, grab up Heart of Soul and Practical Application. You want Arcane Focus. Actually, you don't really need Arcane Focus. You could get rid of that and you could run Arcane Will, and that's going to give you a lot more mana regeneration at the end of the day. It's entirely up to you as to how you want to do that. I'm probably going to go with Arcane Will. Is probably a lot more useful on that basis because you need mana and max mana. And now we have 1,400 mana, and we have 57 regeneration, and I don't think we burn that much mana when we cast our skills, so that actually makes me a hell of a lot more sustainable, so that was actually a really good call there. Alright, so then we come up, we grab Arcane Will, we want Mystic Bulwark, we want 12% reduced mana reservation efficiency. Now, this is only 1%, so it's not actually very significant, so you could save the skill point, and you could actually take like 10% of damage taken is recouped as mana, or you could have like just flat mana regeneration as well, and that's going to give you again a lot more sustainer mana. I'll leave it up to you guys. We'll just leave that point off there and make it a level 99 tree. There's always optimization like this that's really useful. But anyway, okay, so we come up, we got fluid motion. This gives us a lot of dex early on in the tree here. So what's that? 20 dex, strength from passives. This is not the best duel. There is one that converts your intelligence to dexterity from memory. So basically, yeah, if we can do that, we can actually take away some of the intelligence and deal with that dexterity problem. That way, we could also do the same thing with brute strength, I think, from memory as well, or brute force. So I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out. There's only like 2 warning issues that you need to work with, and you can do it with duels at the end of the day. We do get infused flesh, so we get like 6 plus 6, 12. We get 30% damage taken recouped as life. That's going to be really useful for this build. We come across and we get Ravenous Horde. We get Minion Offense Mastery for offerings, and we come down, we want to get Whispers of Doom, and we want to get Written in Blood. We'll talk about the clusters last. So then we come across, we grab all the health nodes in here, increased health. We also want to grab the block nodes for Arcane Guarding in here. And then you want to come and grab the Fearsome Force. We could put that node in there. We get another 700,000 DPS because we're doing more crit strike chance on a minion. And we have minion hits have 50% chance to ignore enemy physical damage reduction, which looking at that doesn't really do anything for the build. So we could do accuracy rating, which is going to take us well over nearly 41 million DPS. And this is part of the process of balancing a build as you go. Sometimes you don't get it right, and so you just got to balance it. You could also strip those nodes back and then use them to path here initially, right? So we'll come back down here, grab all the life nodes here. We don't need these nodes here because we don't have auras, aside from a Herald. And Redemption, and we also want 25% chance to gain Unholy Might for 4 seconds on kill with minions. We also then grab Faith and Steel. There are modifiers in here that you could use. 20% reduced effective curses would be useful, or reduced extra damage from crit. I'll leave you to figure out how you want to do that. And we come down and we have Thread of Hope. And this Thread of Hope, we then give the Sanctuary nodes and the Shield block nodes down here. This just gets us to max block. Now, this is using an Uber drop, right? This is a massive ring, which is an Uber drop. And this will be Uber Cyrus at the end of the day. So if you can't find these on the market, I'm sure that people will have these on the market because it's going to be one of the most ridiculous leagues in existence with totally overcracked builds that are going to be way more powerful than this one. This is like a build that if you really want to play HOAG, you could. And then basically we come and grab the Devotion node here as well. This just gives us more life, effective hit pool, and all the rest of the good stuff that we need. Now, you could also grab this Precision node. It'll help you fix your dexterity problem. You could also grab this node here. It'll give you more damage and it'll also give you strength and intelligence. But for the cluster jewels, the most important thing we need, number one, you could also reduce the nodes on the cluster jewels too, but they're just going to be like 12-point cluster jewels with Call to Slaughter on them at the end of the day. Now, if you want to go one step further and go crazier, if you've got the budget, you could totally get rid of this altogether and you could run Voices. And if you got Voices, you could triple stack these pure Agony nodes, which is going to give you +5 to Virulence. And then basically you could have an additional like 10 Virulence. And if you ran another one, you could run additional 15 or 20 to Virulence. And that would just make you the most ridiculous, like you would get to like 100 million DPS, right? Because the multiplicative. you'd be close to 100 million DPS, something like that. Maybe not that much, maybe 70 or 80 or 90 million DPS. But yeah, it'd be ridiculous. I'm sure someone will come up with a way to do that. But yeah, outside of that, pure Agony, don't really worry about the invigorating portents. It's irrelevant, 400,000 DPS against a tree of 40 billion at that point. We do use replica reckless defenses to basically proc up and get our block chance up to 86%. They're quite effective at doing that. And the same applies here. We have a replica reckless defense, and that's basically it for the tree. I've already spoken about the ascendancy, so yeah, it's not the most complicated build in the world. Now, you know, you could strip nodes off this, take off block nodes, stuff like that. I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out what you want to do. This tree is just a bit of a guide. It's not the probably most optimized tree. There's always better trees out there, but this is going to give you a good chance of getting this to work. And if you're running like Herald of Purity, guess what? It's basically the same setup. It's almost exactly the same, just with different gems in the Purity setup. You could do the exact same exercise. You're probably not going to run this Pure Agony. You may run other nodes that affect minions, but it's more or less the same deal, and you can proc that with Stormbrand or something like that and do tons of damage that way. But yeah, that's basically it for the pathing tree. Okay, so I hope that gives you enough information about how to play a Herald of Agony or a HOAG, Herald Witch at the end of the day. This is just like a theory crafted tree. It's based off my actual tree, and I'll put a video link to that build guide as well in the description so you can see how the build plays and the footage and all the rest of it. But overall, like, I had a lot of fun playing this build. I just could only get it to 5.6 million DPS. This is much more efficient because the Ascendancy allows you to really do some crazy stuff. The next build that I'm going to theory craft is going to be on stream later tonight after I get back from the gym, and that is going to be a Zombie Mancer. I also know that Mustache is also remaking his build as well. I got a comment from him yesterday, maybe early this morning. So yeah, check out his channel as well. I'll put a link in the description. But overall, I'll put some other trees down below from the last league that you can use as a bit of a course template, but this will get you on track. And someone asked me, will I be checking Bone Shatter? The third build that I will do on Saturday night will be Bone Shatter. So we're going to be remaking a Bone Shatter build with at least one of the two Marauder Ascendancies, because there is definitely some stuff that could be used for deep delving there. And then I'm open to suggestions for other builds. If you put the ideas in the description, we'll see if we can theory craft a tree that we can get working, or benchmark a tree or something like that, so we can come up with some cool build combinations. Not going to be able to work through every single ascendancy. It's just not possible, and I'm not that creative when it comes to making POBs like others might be. But yeah, I do have a fair bit of game knowledge, so we should be able to work around and make some cool stuff like what we've done here, and at least get a bit of a skeleton working. Now for this build, as far as leveling goes, literally just you could level with Herald of Agony at like level in the second act, I'm pretty sure you get access to it. And basically you just need to be able to proc it, and it's pretty powerful early on. I would just level with zombies early on, and skeletons, and you start with SRS, and basically just run a minion, like, a zoo build. And basically just stack a ton of minions and get to endgame really quickly. Minions are one of the easiest build archetypes to level through the campaign with, because you don't do too much thinking, and they level up pretty quickly. And basically you'll have Herald of Agony up and running in no time. Anyway, I'll leave you guys to it. Don't forget to like and sub to the channel, and I will see you guys later on.